welcome back. It's a Freaky Friday edition of Liquid Lunch on Newsmax TV. And joining us now, great friend of the show. He was on many times with us in 2019. And I expect to have him on many, many times more in 2020. That's a prediction you can live by. But Fernando Uribe joins us today. He's a professor at Montclair State University. No? Patrice is shaking her head.
No, this is what you run off the stage and you miss all the last minute stuff that goes into the segment. Is it Bergen Community College?
Bergen Community College. Okay, well, I thought he moved. I see Montclair State on my notes here.
We all thought he did.
Well, Fernando Uribe was at Bergen Community College the last time he was here, and still is.
Yes.
How are you doing, my friend?
John, Happy New Year. No, not a problem.
Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
So you're in New Jersey. You're on the campuses. You know what's happening. You're talking to kids. You're watching how the academic environment is shaping around what I call a lot of snowflakes and safe space and all this other crazy stuff. But there in your state, in New Jersey, the Garden State, they're giving illegal aliens driver's licenses now. What is this all about?
Well, John, it's a really big problem, I feel, not just in New Jersey, but also here in New York, with the amount of illegals that live here. And listen, first of all, I'm the son of immigrants, so I understand that there's a compassionate component here. But listen, the rule of law is the rule of law. And I know that this past week, the interim director of Homeland Security, Chad Ford, had passed out a memo talking about sort of evaluating these laws that both New York and New Jersey and 11 other states nationally have passed about giving illegals driver's licenses. And my problem with it is sort of on three levels. Number one, we're rewarding bad behavior. You're here illegally. So driving is a privilege. It's not a right, whether it's in New Jersey, New York, or anywhere else in the country. That's the first thing. Secondly, listen, we know this is ripe for voter fraud and for illegals to be registered to vote. And we know that it happens. Where I live in New Jersey, we know it's synonymous with corruption and with electoral sort of like incongruities all the time. And guess what? It makes it susceptible to this. And the third thing, and this is something that should affect all of us, John, is the idea that, you know what, when you are giving an illegal a license, they have to go to motor vehicle, they have to take their written test, take their road test, and they have to register their vehicle and then insure it. Guess what? No insurance company is going to give an illegal full coverage. They don't give them the minimal coverage possible. And guess what? If, God forbid, you're driving on the West Side Highway, John, and you get rear-ended by an illegal, guess what? Because they're going to have the minimal coverage, you'll have to use your deductible. And guess what? Your premium's going to go up. So at the end of the day, this is not a sound policy, but leave it to Democrats and liberals in New Jersey to think with their hearts instead of with their minds. And you know what? This sort of policy just reeks of potential disaster, John.
Well, Fernando, I certainly am very much in agreement with you that it's an unwise policy, primarily because I think it creates a magnet in states like New Jersey for illegal aliens to come and soak up other social services. But there's a lot of people in the public security sphere that have said, you know what, if a bunch of illegal aliens want to give us all this paperwork and they want to drive legally instead of driving illegally, maybe that's not the worst thing in the world. Now, I understand what you're saying about them only seeking minimal coverage policies, and that may be true. But if John gets into an accident on the West Side Highway, or anybody else does, wouldn't we be better off with him getting into an accident with someone who has at least minimal insurance rather than someone who has no insurance, as would be the case without them having driver's licenses?
No, right, you're absolutely right. And again, my concern is just the fact that any insurance company in New Jersey specifically, Progressive, Geico, Allstate, whatever, based on the fact that this person could be viewed as a liability, they're not here legally, their license is going to demonstrate that they're undocumented or whatever it is that we want, whatever term we want to use. The idea is, yes, they'll be given the most minimal coverage possible. That doesn't mean that in the end, for an accident, like I said, your premium might not go up, and you have to use your deductible. And again, I understand we all want to make the roads safer, folks. But at the end of the day, this is just another example about.
How is this making the roads safer?
Well, you're having fewer people driving without a legal license.
But that doesn't make the roads safer. That means they gave some documented address where they live, but it wasn't documented. We have no way of knowing. Well, if I want to send my son, who's 14, into motor vehicles and say, hey, son, tell him you're an illegal alien and get a driver's license. Here's the paperwork. We have no way of verifying if the person's of age. We have no way of verifying where the person lives. And by the way, Fernando said is right. What insurance company is going to insure an illegal alien who has undocumented status? You're saying they'll get the minimum coverage. I don't know how they can get any coverage.
Well, I mean, this is one of the things that makes the law tricky. And again,
who insures these people? You know, like, is it Progressive or Allstate?
Well, again, John, one of the things that I applaud Chad for in doing with this memo to all the sort of the agencies in Homeland Security is to evaluate the legality of this law. And at the end of the day, listen, the narrative is about making the road safer. I can understand that for a second, but then common sense kicks in. And the problem is, like I said, we're having all these insurance companies, whether New York or New Jersey, having to insure these people. And again, they're going to offer them the minimum coverage. And guess what? You as a full coverage driver, Frank is a full coverage driver, myself, you know what's going to happen? We're going to get the short end of the stick. We'll have to use our deductible. Our premiums go up. And you know what? It's funny because these are all sort of bleeding heart causes, John, when it comes to politics in New Jersey, New York, around the country. But all this is going to do is bleed our pockets even more.
I don't know how it's safer, because if you know you don't live here and you know you have the minimum amount of insurance, you're not really disincentivized from driving like a madman, because there's no repercussion to you. So these people may be more emboldened to drive like maniacs.
I think the idea was a lot of these people are driving anyway, especially in areas.
But right now they're driving 30 miles an hour because they don't want to get pulled over.
Fair enough.
Because they don't have a license.
How has this worked out in the 14 states that already have driver's licenses for illegal aliens? Has there been an uptick in driver's insurance premiums?
Well, the data isn't really out there in full abundance, Frank, and I think this is what really makes the situation problematic. And not only just about the insurance thing as well, but also the voter registration thing. New Jersey is notorious for corruption. We know that the Democratic Party listen, if they can scheme any vote possible, they will do it. And this law has the potential to be disastrous and registering people to vote that should not be voting. And I get it. Listen, again, Democrats and liberals love to preach about inclusivity, but you know what? At the end of the day, it's at the expense of citizens and taxpayers, and it's just wrong. And I really want to speak up about it. I'll keep doing that on my podcast throughout 2020.
What's the podcast again?
You can check out Insider NJ's podcast, insidernj.com/podcast, and you can listen to me at Politically Direct every week.
You got to check out Fernando Uribe, because he's got his finger on the pulse of what's happening on the campuses and what's happening all over New York State and our country. And it's like an epidemic that's slowly spreading. And Fernando's going to keep coming back and giving us what's happening out there on the campuses and the streets and all around the country. Thank you so much, Fernando. Always
Thank you, John.
Appreciate you coming in. Thank you for being there. Don't go anywhere. We're going to stay in Jersey. We have Stuart Meisner on next. He's a candidate for U.S. Senate in New Jersey. And there'll be more Liquid Lunch with Stuart right after this.